Greetings, Mr. Herbst. Can you hear me?
Good evening.
Good.
Oh, good afternoon, wherever you are.
Yeah, it's evening. I'm glad to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Are you stationed in the US right now or in Poland?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm in the U.S.
Okay. We are ready to film. Картинка нормально?
Okay. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay,
Too.
so
A little bit brighter than I'd like, but
it's
just
okay.
lines, but still. Okay.
It's okay, Mr. Herbst. I will
Good.
introduce you and then we'll come to the questions.
Okay, that's good.
Let's go. And more about the relations between Ukraine, the US, and implications of future defense cooperation between Ukraine and America, we'll ask John Herbst, former US ambassador to Ukraine, Uzbekistan, senior director of the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center. Greetings, Mr. Herbst.
Hi, good to see you.
It is very pleasant to see you again in our studio. And the first question of mine will be about the US foreign policy and the particular one, which US foreign policy will put an end to enlargement of the current, as we call it, axis of evil. We see Russia, Iran, and DPRK, etc., gathering forces together, and the US, as the global leader, can put an end to that. So what's the foreign policy that will stop this integration of... Yeah.
First, I welcome the question. The growing cooperation in an aggressive fashion of these four countries is the great national security challenge of this era. And I don't know if the United States could put an end to it, but I don't have any doubt that decisive American leadership would blunt the threat and make the world much more secure than it will be if we continue to see inadequate American leadership. Unfortunately, this danger, the danger of the four acting together against the United States and its allies, was not really brought up in this presidential campaign. But certainly whoever wins, whether it's Harris or Trump, will face the danger when they assume the presidency in late January. The key, in my judgment, to managing this crisis, to blunting the influence, the malign influence of these four countries, is first and foremost to enable Ukraine to win its war against Moscow's aggression. And that would happen if the United States armed Ukraine appropriately, stopped limiting what it sends. We should be, for example, be sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine and allowing them to strike at any strategic target, wherever it is, including in Russia. But also, we should not be holding Israel back as it strikes against Iranian aggression. Netanyahu has done more for American security in the past several months with his weakening of Hezbollah and his strikes on Iran than Biden has. And I don't say that with any pride.
Yes, and just before I come to my next question, I know that you've been involved in the cooperation of US and Ukraine when you were the ambassador. And did you think back then in the late 2000s and pre-2010s that a war between such a state as Ukraine and Russia is possible and that Russia will be again a threat to America?
Well, I was ambassador to Ukraine from 2003 to 2006 during the Orange Revolution. And Moscow's intervention behind the scenes, and for that matter, via its media and via statements and visits made by Putin to Ukraine, was a substantial intervention in Ukraine's politics, but an intervention that failed. I can't say in 2006 I thought that Russia might invade Ukraine, but I did think Russia was a threat to Ukraine. Once the Maidan revolution took place, I can't say I was surprised when Russia took Crimea. I was a bit surprised when they began the war in Donbass.
And yes, that's been a long-standing history of bilateral security cooperation between America and Ukraine. What I see now is that Ukraine is extremely dependent on the American political and military aid. Do you see any strategy for Ukraine to become more self-sufficient in opposing any possible threat coming from the east and north, from the Russian territory?
I think the Ukrainian government, and led by Zelensky, and the Ukrainian people have performed brilliantly and bravely in response to the Russian massive invasion. Of course, given the size of their economy, given the size of their arms industry, and given the size of the aggressor, Ukraine, of course, has required arms and economic aid from the United States, from the EU, and from other defenders of freedom. That's inevitable. And Ukraine has done a wonderful job of using its own resources to defend itself. What we've seen Ukraine do with drones, both naval and air, is simply astonishing, and has been one of the reasons for their success on the battlefield. But you know, the United States is not giving Ukraine a gift when it sends arms, or for that matter, economic aid. It's defending its own interests, because while our politicians don't talk about this, every day Putin or someone senior in Moscow calls America adversary number one. And we know that Putin is actively working to undermine American interest, American strength, American leadership globally.
I believe he's not the only one. We are seeing Tehran's involvement and threats to disrupt the presidential election right now, and the number one adversary of North Korea is officially recognized as the United States. So all these countries are quite negatively not cooperating and seeing their U.S. as their main enemy. And what's happening right now is the battlefield in Ukraine. We have the confirmation of North Korean soldiers being in active combat with Ukrainian forces right now, just today. And do you see any answer coming soon from NATO and U.S. military, possibly because of this first combat encounterment?
First, I must mention the fourth country, the most dangerous in the long run of all, which also sees the United States as an adversary, although it does not say that. That's China. So the growing cooperation of these four revisionist actors, all pursuing policies designed to weaken the United States, is easily the great national security challenge of this era. And while you have a growing number of commentators, foreign policy experts who recognize this, American policy has not quite recognized this to this date. I think we see the Biden team stumbling in direction of recognizing it, but stumbling in that direction, not walking clearly and firmly in that direction. And on the Trump side, I know that the sound people in his foreign policy camp, like Pompeo and O'Brien, understand it and have even said it, and Republicans in the Senate and the House have said it. But there's another group in Trump world which is clueless about the danger that Moscow poses to us, that denies that Russia is working with China and Iran. Harder for them to deny it now that it's working with North Korea, even though that camp does see China, North Korea, and Iran as a problem for the United States. They, like ostriches with their heads in the sand, refuse to see the obvious truth that Putin calls us adversary number one, and he is the most aggressive of the actors working against the United States. So this issue did not really become a matter of discussion during the campaign, a failure of our media to force the candidates to speak about it. But again, the next president is going to face this danger.
I hope that there will be sane decisions regarding this national security threat of global size. And returning to the question of Ukraine, and my final question, you have a great experience in life, in politics, in working as a diplomat. Do you see any possible resolution to the active phase of the war? I am noting that active phase, not the passive confrontation, in the foreseeable future in Ukraine. We are striking this a never-ending conflict, or there is a possible end to it?
My sense is that if Harris wins, we'll see roughly a continuation of Biden's policy. If she is unable, or her administration is able to get an additional aid package through Congress, I think she'd be able to get it. But if you were not able to get it, that would put Ukraine in a very difficult situation. If she pursues the same policies as Biden, the timidity in providing arms, that will also make Ukraine's position harder with each passing month. And that could ultimately lead, either of those could ultimately lead to an unsatisfactory negotiation, which would be a clear step towards Moscow's eventual domination of Ukraine. If Trump wins, again, it depends on which set of advisors wind up driving the policy. If it's people like Pompeo and O'Brien, we'll see a stronger policy than we do right now under Biden. If it's the other crowd, we could see simply appeasement of Russia and giving Putin Russia by ending all American assistance. Trump has said he will get a peace deal quickly. If he gets it by strengthening Ukraine for a successful negotiation of a fair peace, not a bad policy. If he gets it by denying aid to Ukraine and forcing Ukraine into submission, that would be a policy which would remind the world of Neville Chamberlain. And it would make Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan look like a small mistake.
Thank you. That is quite a grim variant of the future, and I hope that America is that sleeping colossus, that the time comes and everyone will see the strong position and the return to global order-based, rule-based order in the world, with ending the war in Ukraine in the first place. Thank you very much,
Absolutely.
Mr. Herbst. Thank you very much. It was a great interview. I remember working with you in the first year of the war, second, and now in the third year of the war, we are still interviewing and talking to you. Thank you.
Actually, we're now in the 11th year of the war, but certainly the third
Yes.
since the big invasion.
The full scale, it is absolutely clear. Thank you for mentioning that.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.